Welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds YouTube page. We're doing our interview series right now, and I have a good friend of mine here, Danny Kelly, to talk to us a little bit about the upcoming draft. Danny, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing excellent. How are you doing, man?
Good. How's everything at the Ringer?
It's really well. It's going really well. It's exciting time of year, obviously. I'm trying to finish up the top 100 draft board that I do every year, and then we've been doing 3 pods a week, so 1 on the fantasy show and then 2 on the NFL show. So it's been really fun, but yeah, just looking forward to finally kicking this thing off. It's like such a long buildup and so much anticipation. I just want to see what happens the first round. I can't win. I need to see what happens at number 3. Like, I'm so sick of this conversation. We just need to get it done.
Who do you think it's going to be in your heart of hearts? Who do you think it is?
In my heart of hearts, I think it's going to be Justin Fields. In my head, I think it's going to be Mac Jones.
Okay. Trey Lance out of the picture for you or no?
I mean, no, he's right there too. It's, in fact, I've heard that if it's not Mac, like I've heard more whispers that it's Trey Lance if it's not Mac. So maybe, I don't know. I think the heart of hearts thing is just, I just want Fields to be that pick because I think he deserves to be that pick and he should be that pick. In fact, he probably should be the number 2 pick in my mind, but
I agree. As you can see the Buckeye stuff up there. So that's not hard to.
There you go. Oh yeah. I forgot about that. But yeah, so I don't know. I really don't know. It's one of those things where logic would say everybody's reporting this, like Adam Schefter's reporting it. That's a pretty freaking good indication that it's going to be Mac Jones. However, it almost feels like too many people are like, sure, it's going to be Mac Jones. It's like, this is very clearly in my heart. It's a smokescreen, right? Like this is very clearly like sleight of hand. They just don't want us to know who they're taking. And the fact that, Justin Fields is getting the least amount of hype for that spot makes me think that maybe he's the guy. So it's all very like contradictory. You could say anything. You're going to contradict yourself, but yeah, again, ultimately I hope it's Justin Fields, not from my Seahawks point of view, because, if I was being selfish, I would say, I hope they take the worst quarterback and he busts.
Right.
But from a draft fan and Justin Fields fan point of view, I really want him to be in San Francisco. I think that'd be a great fit for them.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, so let's get into some of the content we wanted to talk about today. Before we start talking about specifics and specific players, I wanted to ask you about your process when you're watching tape. What are some things that you really hone in on, maybe for specific positions or things that matter to you a little bit more than maybe the general masses would know?
So this part, I'm sure this doesn't not matter to people, but I think I pay a lot of attention to like movement skills, agility, like just a balance, things like that, where, it's not just straight line speed or acceleration. It's like movement skills, the ability to change directions, balance, like all that stuff I think is so important in football. It's such like, and it's a hard thing to measure. Like I don't know if like the tests really truly measure it. So it's more like an eyeball test thing, but I definitely feel like I look and have an affinity for just a person's movement skills, their agility, things like that. So I think like with pass rushers, that's really important. With running backs, receivers, I think all that stuff is really important. And so I don't know. I think that would be like the first thing that kind of jumps out to me is if you're going to talk about, all the other past like the obvious stuff, stats,
right?
All that stuff. I think that's kind of like where I go.
No, I think that's a good call because that is something that translates to every position. If you don't have good balance and you can't move like the way you need to, other than just like track speed, right, it's gonna make it difficult for you to be able to be successful. The game is not run in a straight line.
Like Chubb, like Nick Chubb to me is a perfect example where he's obviously very explosive. He's obviously very athletic, but when you watch him, it's like, oh, this guy just moves differently than everybody. His feet, this is the analogy I've used. His feet seem to like grip the ground differently than everybody. And that's like his overall athletic ability. He just can, explode with very little wasted movement. And so Nick Chubb is sort of like, I think the best example of it, but that's the kind of thing I try and like look at when I'm watching tape.
No, it makes a lot of sense. All right, so let's get into some of the specific prospects because a lot of people have their drafts coming up, their fantasy football drafts right after the NFL draft, because us Dynasty folks, we're fiends. It's terrible. Yeah. So we're already looking at like, okay, who do I take? Like, okay, if it's super flex or if it's one QB. So let's break it down to simpler terms though. At the let's start with the running back position because that's usually the one people get most excited about for fantasy football.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about these top three guys? And then after the big three, or assuming that you do also believe that there is a big three, after the big three, who are some other later round guys that you think could be interesting if they landed in the right spot?
Yeah. So I agree that there is a big three. And I have it's pretty chalk for me. I think Najee Harris is sort of the most all around exciting and complete guy. I don't really care that he's older. I like that he can catch passes. He's done it at a high level. He has really, again, going back, he has incredible body control. Like you can see him go up and spin and catch the ball, land and keep running with like no like sign that he's lost any of his balance or anything. It's like incredible. Right. So I love his athleticism. I love his size. I think he's probably going to be, if he's not a first rounder, I think he'll be an early second rounder. I would lean second round. I mean, just look walking last year, like Jonathan Taylor was a second rounder.
Right.
So I think he'll probably be, I think all the running backs will be second rounders. All the big three, I should say. But I don't know. I think if he lands in a spot where he's getting, he's going to be the lead guy, I think he's going to be an awesome fantasy guy. So I would lean Harris. And then I still waffle between Etienne and Williams because I think Etienne is more special from a speed, explosion, acceleration point of view. Mm-hmm. And he's a good pass catcher, but Javonte Williams is really, really skilled and talented. Yeah. He's good at, he's rare, like contact balance. He's got that Marshawn Lynch. He's just made out of cement type deal where guys just sort of slough off of him when he's like running through the hole. It's weird. Some players and some human beings just have that property, I guess, about them where they seem to be made out of cement. But I think he's, he got great feet. Javonte Williams, I'm talking about great feet, balance, agility, all that stuff. He's just not a home run hitter, which I don't really care about. Obviously, if I like Harris the most, I don't really, it's not a top priority. It's a bonus for me. So Etienne, I think is going to be landing spot dependent. He has high upside. I think he's the type of guy who could end up being like a tier 1 fantasy receiver or running back if he can be used in an offense where he's getting a lot of like looks in the passing game, all that stuff. But to me, he's not a make you miss in the backfield type of guy. He's not not a lot of lateral agility there. Exactly. He is a tackle breaker, but in a different way, because I think his explosiveness and like he looks like he's shot out of a cannon. That's how he breaks tackles. He like runs through arm tackles that way versus some guys make opponents miss. It's a totally different sort of thing. And so, I don't know. So originally I put Darren McFadden as my comp, but I'm starting to lean more and more to the oh crap. Now I'm totally blanking on his name. The former Cowboys running back, DeMarco Murray.
DeMarco Murray. Yeah.
He kind of reminds me of Murray, where it's like, he doesn't have a lot of wiggle, but he's fast, explosive, and just seems to have like a knack for scoring touchdowns. And so I don't know. I think he's like in that area. His upside is more like, I mean, he's not as smooth and agile as like a Kamara, but like if he could get into that pass catching role and have like 20 touches total, like 10 or 15 carries plus 5 or 6 targets or catches a game, like he could be elite. I think he has the talent to be, but it's going to take a team thinking that he's that guy. And so I'm not as certain that's going to be the case, I guess.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm a big Javonte Williams fan personally, and I do really like Travis Etienne. But the thing you said that I totally agree with is I do think Etienne is the most landing spot dependent of these running backs. You get him in an outside zone scheme where he can utilize that speed and explosion. Give him to Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, or
that'd be unfair.
I mean, it really would be. I mean, he's basically Raheem Mostert, just better.
Right, exactly.
You know, so or maybe even the Jets, since I'm assuming they're going to be running a lot of the same concepts.
That would be nice. Yeah.
So I think those two spots would be good for him. But if a guy like Harris went to Pittsburgh, I would be fine with that. But I don't know that I'd be fine with Etienne in Pittsburgh. Like I don't think that's a good fit for him. So I'm with you on that. I think it's a little more landing spot dependent for Travis there. All right. So with the later round guys, who's one of those guys that you're kind of interested in?
So there's a couple. The first guy that came to my mind when you said that is now I'm blanking on his name too. Let me pull it up. Oh,
No, you're
Kylan
good.
Hill. I was thinking Kylan Herbert, and I was like, I'm putting two guys together. Kylan Hill, who I think if you would have gone back to this time last year and he had declared for the draft last year, he'd probably be like in that second, third round range. I think, I'm just like sort of reading the tea leaves on like what he did production wise. I was going back and I found some like tweets, people talking about him in like the second, third round, but then he ended up like not declaring and all that.
Right.
So to me, he's got the size. He's like 5'10", 215 ish. He's a good pass catcher. Like he showed in college that he can catch passes. And I don't know. I just like on tape, like he looked pretty dynamic to me. So I think he's definitely getting like slept on a little bit. I don't think he's like an elite guy, clearly. But I watch his tape. I think he has a chance if he gets it, like you said, if he gets a chance to like be in a system that's going to give him some touches, he could definitely surprise some people. And then Khalil Herbert was the other guy I was thinking. And I think he's like sort of a vanilla prospect, not going to stand out in any one area really, but he's just good. He's like athletic. He's the right size. He's a good size. He breaks tackles. He plays really hard. I listened to an interview with him on the PFF show, and he just seems like the guy. He like loves football, and he's the type of guy who's just gonna like play his ass off. So I don't know. I think he's another like later round guy that I've been taking swings at in rookie drafts. So I've been going for Kylan Hill, Jamar Jefferson from Oregon State, and then Khalil Herbert are kind of like the three guys I would be jumping on their bandwagon late.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on Kylan Hill. I'm a big Kylan Hill fan. I think he's got that prototypical size and speed that you want. And then, Mike Leach came to town and he got to show off his hands for a few games too. So
I think it's just like this last season was like horrific for him in the idea of his draft prospects. Like, it just didn't come together like I think he was hoping it would. And like now you're seeing him slide, like he's probably gonna be like a 5th or 6th rounder. And I really do think if he would have come out last year, he'd probably been like a 3rd rounder.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm hoping he sneaks into the 4th round there where we get a little bit better draft capital, some hope at maybe sneaking in a job here or there, maybe go to Atlanta or something like that. I don't know.
That would be perfect. Yeah.
So, all right. So let's talk about the receivers. Tell me what you think about this receiver class as a whole. And then a couple guys, either late or early, doesn't matter, that you really like.
Okay. So I think the class is a very good class. I like it because it's really deep and there's a lot of different style of guys in this class. I think the one issue that you'd have and the one worry I think overall is like a lack of size, generally speaking, for that's like the thread that kind of runs through all these is like there's very few true outside X type players. But at the same time, with the way that the NFL is like kind of like going, it's more space, it's more like basketball on grass. You got 3 guys lining up almost all the time now, well, not almost all the time, but at a higher rate than ever before. You can find roles for guys like Tutu Atwell or, these smaller, speedy guys, Dwayne Eskridge or whatever. I'm not high on either of those guys necessarily for fantasy, but I do think they could come into the league and like do well despite the size implications. But I won't like bore you with like me telling you I love all these top 5 guys because I basically like I don't dislike any of like the top 6 or 7 receivers in this class.
Sure.
A couple guys I like late though that I'm looking at and I'm like, why are people not talking about these players more? I think and I could tell you the answer is like production, but Josh Palmer from Tennessee, I like a lot. And Cornell Powell from Clemson, I like a lot. And so both of these guys like do not fit the analytical profile that a lot of dynasty players follow. Late breakout or no breakout or whatever. And, they're older. Well, Cornell Powell is 23. Josh Palmer, I think, is 21. So he's maybe not quite on the same level. I think Palmer I probably have ranked higher. But, I mean, I watched both these guys play. So start with Palmer. He's really good deep. He has like this talent of getting the corner on his back hip and just like dominating down the field. He's very good. He beat a couple of like high level SEC corners this year, Patrick Surtain and Tyson Campbell for touchdowns. Like their offense was terrible. A lot of like, I think they had a total of 14 total passing touchdowns the whole season. And he caught 4 of them. So, I mean, it's not like his output or whatever was really eye opening, but he was definitely like their lead guy. I think he's a good player. He looked good in the tape that I watched from the Senior Bowl. He's got the size. He's 6'2", 210-ish or whatever, something around there. And I think he's just the type of player that he comes into league and he's like better than you think. And then I'd say the same for Powell, who he came in as a 4-star, I believe, like a pretty highly ranked receiver to Clemson, but then he just couldn't beat out the guys in front of him. There was like a lot of future NFL guys in front of him. It sounds like, based on, I was reading Dane Brugler's report on him, and he got some quotes from Dabo Swinney about how he like matured. It was like night and day going into his final season at Clemson, like his practice habits. He finally, I think a light just kind of finally went on with him. And so I guess what I would intimate from that is early on in his career, he just didn't have the right attitude or take it seriously enough or whatever. Like his practice habits were not good enough to make a difference. And that was why he never really broke into the offensive lineup until his senior year. But when you watch him, he's the type of guy who, there were some games where he's just like freaking dominating. Like, I know that's
so
like
physical, man.
That's like a strong word to use, but yeah, he like goes up over guys. He was like mossing dudes like on the sideline. Now he's not like a big separator. He's not super sudden, but he's athletic. He's big. I mean, he looks like AJ Brown, like physically.
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
And I don't know, he's just really strong. That's the other thing with Josh Palmer. Dude has the strongest mitts I've ever seen. Not really. That's exaggeration, but he has very strong hands. You'll see like a pass hum in at him, like a freaking dagger, and he just plucks it like no problem. He's got really natural, strong hands. I'd say the same with Cornell Powell. I think he's just like really strong at the catch point. Both of these guys are probably going to be, well, Palmer, he could sneak into I have been hearing buzz that he's like going to go higher than people think. 3rd round probably is like the height that he'd go.
For
more
Powell?
Likely 4th. Yeah, for Palmer.
Oh,
and
for Palmer. Okay.
For Powell, sorry, yeah, Palmer, I've been hearing buzz that he's going to go higher than people think.
Okay, got it.
Powell, I'm guessing, is like a 4th or 5th rounder.
Sure.
But if either of these guys end up in a good situation with like a good quarterback that's willing to throw into tight windows, I think they could be better than people think. I understand they're probably not going to be like fantasy studs, but I do think they're worth gambling on. Like if you're picking late in the 3rd, like 4th round of your rookie drafts, I think these are perfect guys to gamble on because their size, physicality, speed, just upside to be an outside X type guy.
Yeah, no, we were talking about Cornell Powell on the Dynasty Nerd show last night, and he was a guy that really did impress me. I hadn't watched much tape on him up until this past week, just because so many players that watch a lot of tape on.
Yeah.
And, I finally got to him, and I remember him doing well against Ohio State, and I was like, oh, Powell's actually doing something okay. And then I went back and watched him against Notre Dame and Pitt, and I was like, this kid can play. So I'm on board with that. So the positions that aren't as exciting for fantasy football typically are the tight end and the quarterback. People don't get as excited about those positions, but is there anybody at either one of those positions that, obviously Kyle Pitts and Trevor Lawrence, like those guys, we know they're pretty good. Yeah. But outside like super, super obvious names, is there anybody in either one of those groups that you're like, I'd take a flyer on? And really what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to get your draft board for our rookie draft coming up here to make sure that you don't sneak any of the guys ahead of me.
Should I just like completely lie to you here so I can get a better pick?
I love.
So I think the 2 tight ends that kind of come to mind, obviously Pat Freiermuth and Kyle Pitts are like the 2 top guys.
Right.
I went back and watched more Hunter Long the other day, and it like kind of made me less excited about him, but I do think he is the type of guy that a team is going to like, and that he'll be used. So Greg Cosell keeps saying this every time I've heard Greg Cosell talk about Hunter Long. It's like, no one really expected Zach Ertz to be like this high volume pass catcher in the NFL. He was like just a solid, no nonsense tight end who with good hands and like understands spacing and all that stuff. I think that's like Hunter Long. So his absolute upside, if he lands in a system that wants to use the guy as a security blanket over the middle of the field, Hunter Long is that guy. But if you talk to Eagles fans, it's like the running joke is he's never once broken a tackle in his life. Like he's so undynamic after the catch. It's unbelievable. Literally, like he falls down instead of trying. Like someone gets like if anyone gets in his range, he just falls down. That's the kind of like after the catch kind of guy. He's like, that's Hunter Long. He's unexciting. He's not explosive. He's not twitchy. But he is long. He's reliable. And I think he's understands spacing. He has good body control. So like I could see there's a world in which I could see Hunter Long end up being a volume pass catcher in the NFL. But it's just he's going to have to land in a situation where the quarterback loves checking it down to his tight end or whatever. You know what I mean? So he's a good like later round, like fourth round type guy, you know, especially in tight end premium leagues where if you want to take a flyer on him, I think that makes a lot of sense. The Tommy Tremble one, again, I was watching him again recently and I was just like, I don't know, I guess I could see it. Like he's athletic, he can move well. But I feel like he fights the ball as a pass catcher when it comes to him. He's very raw. And obviously, you know, he doesn't have a lot of production. I think he was like the fifth or sixth option in that offense. And so it's a huge ass projection to say this guy's going to be a fantasy, player or whatever. But if a team wants to use him in like the Jono Smith role, I think that's where it becomes interesting because he's sort of like in that range or like the Gerald Everett size where you're using him as a mismatch creator and all that stuff. But I worry that people are that some team is just going to turn him into a fullback, you know what I mean? And he'll get like one or two targets a game. So excuse me. So that's my worry. I think he has a lot of exciting traits and he's very athletic and he's physical. I'm going to comp him to I comped him to Marcel Reese / Juggernaut just because he tries to run through people's faces like they're a brick wall. He legit just tries to run through them. And he's like this hard, just like physical lead block type guy. But I'm worried that's going to mean he's going to be like a legit fullback for some Shanahan style team. And you're just like,
I can see that.
Kyle Juszczyk is worthless in fantasy. So like, why are we getting excited about Tremble if he's going to be in that same role? And so it really depends on if he ends up being like a true tight end for a team or if they try and turn him into like a glorified fullback or whatever. So that's my main worry, but he's exciting from an athletic point of view.
No, it makes a lot of sense. All right. Anybody else in this class that maybe they're not the most exciting name, but you at least want to get their name out there on video, just so people are aware of the name and
they can associate themselves with me.
Right. Just in case it hits. If not, we'll delete it. But just in case they hit.
Yes, that's good. Well, I'm stealing this from my buddy Nate Tice, who begged me to watch this guy for about 3 months, and I finally got around to it. And I was like, oh, I get it. And that's Amir Smith Marset from Iowa, who he is to me pretty interesting, honestly. And I think if he goes in the fourth or fifth round, obviously if he goes any later than that, then the odds become very low that he's going to do anything. But if a team looks at, and he's the same deal as the two guys I mentioned previously, Josh Palmer and Cornell Powell, and he just didn't have production. He was in a bad passing offense. I'm so sick of watching Iowa's passing offense over the years, like going from, Kittle to Hawkinson. It's like, God, their freaking quarterback play is atrocious. It sucks. I'm sick of watching it. But anyway, he's the type of guy who every time you watch him, he's just getting over a defense. He's getting on top of a defense. Very good acceleration. Seems to have a good feel for getting off the line of scrimmage, cleanly stacking a corner and just getting over the top of them. Very good deep threat. So like in the right system, again, he could be like a poor man's version of De'Ami Brown, where this guy can like in a role where the quarterback trusts him and is willing to like let loose, he could be kind of surprising. But he's got a lot of like work to do, I think, on the short and intermediate stuff. They do use him on like sweeps and screens and things like that. But his main talent, I would say, is he's just like a really dangerous deep threat. So get him in the right offense with a good quarterback who can throw deep, accurately, and we could be surprised.
Awesome. Well, Danny, anything else you want to tell us about that's going on with you, going on with the Ringer? Anything else before we get out of here?
Yeah, check out the NFL Draft Guide at the Ringer, and check out the Ringer Fantasy Football Show, which I do once a week with Danny Heifetz and Craig Horlbeck. And then with Danny, we do 2 shows a week, the Ringer NFL Show, Big Board Show. So we're basically just covering the NFL Draft on the NFL Show. So check those out. And yeah, Ringer NFL Draft Guide.
Awesome. One last thing I need to say. Was there any pushback when you went from the Dynasty show to the ring to the Ringer Fantasy Football Show.
We definitely like went corporate, right? You know, it's like no. So the problem is, here's the deal: when you type in Dynasty into Google, it just autocorrects to fantasy, so no one can find our freaking show. So in our hearts, we're still the Dynasty Football Show.
Good.
Get it, like Danny and Danny. But but now we're the Ringer Fantasy Football Show because it's much more SEO friendly and people kind of understand what it is when you talk about it.
Makes sense.
So
that makes sense.
It just makes a little bit more sense. So yes, there was pushback from in our hearts, but it made a lot of sense, like just realistically.
So the masses appreciate it, but like the people that enjoy the deep cuts, they're still the Dynasty
if you know,
guys.
I mean, if you know, you know. But,
all right, man. Well, I appreciate your time. We'll let you get out of here. Thanks so much for hopping on with us.
Thank you, man.